In our industry, we have an immense amount of complexity. Whether you're a passenger who flies occasionally and has to learn how an airline thinks and communicates in order to get the best experience, or you're an airline who's looking for partners to develop your network and build your passenger basis, or you're working with regulators to get people through an airport, things will go wrong. Yeah, they really will. And the thing about a pain point is you become an industry leader when you take the pain point and you turn it into an advantage. That's what makes you stand out. Now, unfortunately, as soon as you do that, another pain point will crop up. I can give you an example. I travel regularly from Geneva Airport in Switzerland, and it is a lovely and wonderful airport. They recently introduced non-divest screening. So they have a small area that you can go through, no need to take your laptop out, just put your bag in, straight through, very nice experience. Their new pain point is their fast track, which doesn't have that technology. So you're a fast track passenger, you've paid your extra money, and you're wondering why you have to take everything out and put everything back and join a queue, which you don't have to do with the non-divest. So, like I say, pain points will crop up. To discuss those pain points today, I have got an incredibly good panel who will be presenting their particular solutions and what they're doing. You're going to hear about how we can take disruption and make it a positive, how we can improve our operation to find the time and flexibility to cope with the unexpected, and how we can take new technologies and use them to solve a massive pain point, which is, what happens when your bag doesn't arrive. So I would like to invite my panel up to the stage now. Gentlemen, please come and join me. As I like to see the enthusiasm, Marlon. See Thomas. See Kevin. Hello. Hey. So we're going to start off with a presentation from HRS Crew and Passenger Solutions from Luca and Ivo. I would like you to come up and take over, please.
Thank you
and
very
I'm
much.
Looking forward to learning from you.
Yeah. So, hello to everyone. It's so great to be here in this forum with so many digital dreamers. That's our place where we like to be. As I tell to my team, digital transformation is a journey. And this journey starts with attitude, but then goes to execution. And today, with Ivo, we want to tell you a story about how to move from attitude to execution. And this is the story of the second largest Scandinavian carrier, low-cost carrier, which in the middle of summer, last summer, big chaos, so fast recovering with flights from the full COVID period. They've been moving from attitude, what they were thinking, to execution. And before to go deeply into this story, I want to start about why we are doing what we are doing. And we have seen about huge numbers that they're coming back. Actually, we are exceeding even the 2019 numbers. And all that is still creating a lot of pressures. So we have seen all the different operations that they're still going under pressure. And this is, unfortunately, still continuing. And that's not because there are no solutions, but also because there are still so many open jobs in this kind of industry. We have up to now more than 2.3 million open jobs that they are there. And this is, unfortunately, still going to create some kind of pressure. And industry is still having challenges to find those jobs. And the question I have for you, Ivo, is that how to be future ready. Can you tell us a little bit more about what we did with Norwegian and how to move from attitude to execution?
Great. I didn't see that question coming, Luca, but thank you very much for asking the question. How to be future ready. We're talking about to be future ready. We're hearing about new passengers, a new type of passengers coming into our aircrafts. I think the future is actually today, not to say it was already yesterday. Passengers are expecting from us a different kind of approach, specifically during disruptions. If we have a closer look at Norwegian, and then at the summertime, this was the time that we were released free after COVID. We all could travel again, and we all wanted to travel. But the airlines were struggling with staff, getting a network up and running in a very sustainable way. At that time, Norwegian had the same kind of challenges as well, but they have a very customer-focused approach. With a customer-focused approach, it's also a digital approach. Knowing a customer, let's say the new kind of customer, rather does something on their mobile phone. And this morning I was introduced to the young man over here, your son. You have more or less the same age as my son has. I can hardly speak to him. He WhatsApps me rather than calling. I hired young salespeople, and I said, do you know if the customer is available? I dropped him a text. I didn't get an answer yet. I said, well, there's a thing where you can call people. That's fantastic. But your generation does things on the mobile, and you're the generation which will pay the bill in the future as well. So good that you're here. In the digital journey, we're also collecting data better. During a disruption, it's very difficult to understand what did you do with a customer, and how actually do you differentiate your customer. A business class customer might want to be treated differently, but during a disruption, when it matters most, you actually put everything into one big bin. And I think that's where an airline, which is a community good, we don't want to hear that, but it's a commodity. It's the time to differentiate. I heard about earlier presentation where a plane was going like this, like cost and passenger experience. This is the only time during a disruption where it both goes up. You save money and you increase your passenger experience at the same time. Using one platform, as Norwegian has chosen to do, you're also collecting that data. By collecting data, you better understand what you've done with your customer. By better understanding what you've done, you can improve, because we're ending with an NPS score afterwards as well. How does it work? There's a triggered event. Wow, cancellation, delay incoming. A lot of our customers have that, delay incoming customers. So we call it like the tap. It's the water dripping constantly, hundreds of passengers coming in. Then it's about communication. The passenger does not know. As long as he does not know, he will act himself, which makes the operational mess. So start to communicate in a very fast and efficient way. We hear airlines asking us, can you integrate with an app? Yes. But why would you like to integrate with the app in the first phase? Because probably less than a 2-digit percentage of the people in the plane will have that app. That leaves a good 80 to 90% of the people out of the occasion. It might help these people to get your app, so turn it the other way around. Using one platform means refreshment vouchers for an entire network, lodging for an entire network, maybe with your own contracted rates at your hub because you have a potential volume in pricing. But on your outstations, you might not have that buying power, but why not combine it with the others? Because we buy a lot of rooms at a certain destination, in Frankfurt, for example, and I have an Eastern European carrier flying into Frankfurt and saying, how do you get these prices? Well, because we combine the volume at that station. The same thing goes for transportation. It needs to work at any station. Monetary compensation, instantly wired back into your bank account. And eventually, feedback management. We send out a text message. In that text message, we give you access to the portal. We call it your own personal portal. But at the end, we convert it into an NPS scoring. Because who knows best? It's not us. It's not you as an airline. It's the passenger. And we've been doing this for the last 8 years to 9 years. And we came up with brilliant ideas that in reality was less brilliant. And I give you one example. We have an opportunity to call a taxi, like an Uber, Bolt kind of experience, which works fantastically for a delay incoming passenger. But when you have a mass disruption, and you're calling 150 Uber taxis to come to your airport, it suddenly doesn't work that nice anymore. In the NPS scoring, it reflected it. People were saying, there are like 150 taxis standing in front of the airport. Why don't you let me take one of these taxis? Why do I have to wait again? And these kind of things is very valuable information, and it helps us to become better for your customers, and eventually it will come back in the NPS scoring as well. So it's the timing, performance when it counts, with a solid background in the IT, in the immediate response, communication, be fast, and give them that peace of mind. I've been heard, they know that I'm standing here, and they're taking care of me. It's an IT project. So this is going to be a long time, cost me a lot of money, and actually we don't know what we're doing. What is the software as a service? That's what we're doing. So it's out of the box. It's connecting to your data set. If you're a Sabre or Amadeus customer, that's fantastic news because we have partnerships with them. It's making sure that you can get to the platform single sign-on, and we communicate with your look and feel with your DNS setting. If you're not technical, you can forget it. Just remember, it's 8 weeks to implement. And I'm not technical either myself. So what did we do? The real case, because you were saying, you know, we're dreaming and we see a vision and we have a dot on the horizon. Well, we are actually, we're past the dot right now here. One evening we had 100 disrupted passengers in Oslo. If you know Oslo Airport a little bit, it's a little bit outside of the middle of the city. They pressed the button. 92% of the people did it on their mobile, which was a time saving of 80% for their own staff. But not only the people who did it on the mobile, they were able to collect the money, collect the interaction they had with the people, because we're monitoring that in our dashboard. And the other people that came to the desk, which could be my grandmother, they had time to be serviced. So even non-digital people or oriented people will benefit from a digital solution by having more time available to service these people. So also that will impact an NPS score. Resulting into an NPS scoring during the disruption, because we were measuring that, of an 8+, which when that was presented to the CEO, he was saying somebody is fiddling around with the figures because I never saw an NPS scoring of a disruption with an 8+. And the feedback that we got was pretty straightforward. And this is real feedback. And it almost made me cry, because when we started the company, this was the reason why we started it. I was that passenger. I was amazed and astonished that the airline was handling it as it was for the first time. Really? And then having the guts of calling it irregular operations. It's regular operations, but differently. So get your stuff together. And Sophie took even the time on the 12th of December to send this to the airline, applauding them how they actually handled that disruption. And this is a real customer and a real passenger giving feedback on social media. And I think there must be not one airline in the room who doesn't want to have the same feedback during a disruption on social media, because 99% of the social media is not that positive of an airline during a disruption. So the outcome is that we help you to build that customer experience when it's been challenged most, build more loyalty and reduce your cost and get you better data at the same time. Move away from a paper operation into more paperless, but still have my grandmother being serviced at the desk in the same application, in the same platform, collecting the same data to be consistent with data. Rewrite things back in the PNR, because eventually your contact center will use the data of the PNR and will not be done from our platform. Saves you one connection. Make sure that you're 100% compliant. EU 261 regulation, we all have to obey to it. And the United States pretty soon as well. Well, people from the United States, thank God we're here in Europe ahead of the curve there, so you can benefit from it. So see us afterwards and we'll tell you what we've done to make it work together. And we drive passenger loyalty. A passenger who has the time to post something like this, and there are more out there on Twitter, so if you want to go, be free, who takes the time to post this is a customer for life. And she will tell at every birthday party how fantastic it was. And these are the most difficult people to find. So thank you very much for your time. This is our story about how we believe disruption should be handled. There are airlines, large airlines already joining us, based in Germany, based in other parts of the world, in the Middle East as well. So if you want to join that group of people who think they can do better for less money, make savings, have a happier customer, then I think we're the right persons to talk to. So thank you all.
So Ivo, it's possible to move from attitude to execution.
Well, you know, the world is full of good ideas, but executing them is the most difficult part. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it seems like such a natural idea that in times of disruption, as a passenger, you probably want to have that level of help and confidence and control in what's going to happen. I mean, I don't fly with the best airline in the world. They think they're the best, but they're not. And the number of times I've flown with them and then they've cancelled a flight and I've just walked away from that airport and booked my own hotel, booked my own flight, and then given them grief for a month afterwards until they've paid the compensation plus all my costs. It really does seem like you can improve the customer service and save them a lot of cash at the same time. Maybe I'll start looking forwards to disruption. Okay, so the next presentation that we have is from Kevin and Thomas. And this is going to be about how they've tweaked their operation, put a lot of investment and thought into that operation. And when you do that, you can reduce some critical KPIs. And I think that gives you the time to be able to take care of things when they go wrong. Remember at the start I said, something's going to happen, you can either fix it wonderfully and make it a good experience, as we've had from HRS, or you can try and make sure it doesn't go wrong in the first place. So, Kevin, Thomas, please take the stage.
Hello, everyone. How's it going? Today, we're going to talk about passenger movement and doing the turn. So as I was saying, we at Southwest are doing some things to improve, optimize our operations, and the turn, how we in-plane and deplane customers is a very big piece of that. So I'm going to start off with a quote from Herb Kelleher, who is our founder. Herb is always very good about what we call spinning a yarn. And these quotes, he does a lot of these. What's important is that a customer should get off the plane feeling, I didn't just get from A to B, I had one of the most pleasant experiences I've ever had, and I'll be back for that reason. So at Southwest, we're not just focused on flying the customer, and I've heard this theme a couple times through, right? It's the whole experience, the journey. And for us, that's what we do at Southwest. We're very focused on customers in the entire journey, not just getting on that plane. So the turn is a very critical part of that. So why is the turn important? So first thing, customer experience, what I just said. We all want our customers to be as happy as this guy right here. This guy's very happy about life. It's probably because he had a good turn. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm getting on a flight, I love like when I've got my bag stowed and I can sit down on my seat and I can just kind of relax, there's no stress. Right? That's what we're talking about. Because I know when I'm boarding, I'm getting on easily, I'm sitting down. That is what we're going for with the turn. And I'm getting off easily too. I'm not waiting forever. Customer experience is always the number one thing for us. Fuel efficiency and power saving. So that's kind of a selfish airline thing. The longer our planes are on the ground, the more fuel they're consuming, or the more power they're consuming connected to the jet bridge. So the quicker we can get them in and out, we save that money. On-time performance. Now this is a key factor for both customer experience, and we're actually measured on it by, like all airlines are, how quickly we can get to our destinations on time. And if you're a customer, you're very concerned with this because we all have plans as soon as we're landing. We want to get off the plane and go do what we're trying to do. We're trying to get to a place on time. So on-time performance is a very key metric. So these are important for all airlines. If you're an airline in this room, you should be thinking about all these things. But for Southwest, we're what's called a point-to-point system. So if you don't know what that is, we don't have a hub. We rely on the flight from the last city to connect to another city so that we can complete the schedule. So it's very critical that the term times hit just to make sure that we have that plane ready to go. But what's also important is that when those flights land, I don't know if you knew this, the crew does not stay with the aircraft. So those crews bail out, and they will oftentimes be dispersed on all sorts of different flights. So giving those crews time to get to the other flights is another key thing of why the turn is very important for us. And finally, aircraft utilization, right? So if we get our turns done on time, then that means we're using our aircraft fully to meet our schedule. And if we can get them done a little faster, then we can actually fit in more routes for our customers. So we fully utilize our aircraft, and we get actually advantages if we can shave time off the turn. Just to give you a quick overview, this is not something we're just working on for fun in the innovation space. This is actually a strategic goal of Southwest, and we've got multiple teams working on the turn. We're just coming at it from an innovation perspective. So this slide is really demonstrating when we work on innovation projects, we're looking at fast, simple, consistent fun. So we're trying to make sure that anything we do has a good impact on the customers, it's easy, and a good impact on our employees. So we don't want things to be hard or time-consuming. All right, so 3 key areas of improving the turn: passenger movement, turn management, and turn optimization. So the first 2 I'm going to cover on the innovation side as part of the passenger movement project. They're going to key in on turn management, and they're going to key in on passenger movement. So for this project, we've come up with 3 major components. We have a mobile experience, we have some new displays, and we have what's called digital stanchions. So mobile experience is a suite of apps that are dedicated for the turn, that we give our employees, both our CSAs, our ops agents, and our flight attendants. And really, this is the first suite of applications Southwest has ever had to manage the turn. Some features of the mobile apps is, well, they drive everything. They are what we call the brains of the operation. So they do things like start a turn clock. So they'll start a turn clock, and all the pieces of this ecosystem will display a turn clock. So you know how quickly the turn is going, because we found out people who know how long things are taking will try to speed it up. Right now, we're doing it kind of blind. So yeah, if you know you're running behind, you're going to speed it up. We have a chat in there to allow people to chat back and forth. So we're not running down the jet bridge to go, hey, we need to start checking bags or things like that, or there's an issue. We have a specials list and cruise check-in, so we know who's coming on board. We also know when our crew is there. So I said back, our crews disperse out, so we can start checking, hey, do we have all the crew members? Because we can't take off unless we have a full crew complement. And the interesting thing about this is that we also have some pre-recorded announcements. We have speakers in the jet bridges so that people can press buttons, and they can have announcements of like, hey, our bins are full, or hey, middle seats are only available. What's key about that is they can hit those buttons, and it frees up people like our flight attendants to actually deal with the customers and not have to go through this whole announcement process. The final piece of this is roving agent. That just really allows our CSAs to get out from on the desk, talk to customers, print bag tags, and just really help facilitate all those little pieces of the turn where the ops agent can get overwhelmed. We also have a set of really cool displays. These displays provide information about when the plane's arriving, if it's late, hey, if it's really full, which people love to know, because if you're in our last boarding group and you're about to board a full flight, odds are we're going to have to check that bag, so people like to know that ahead of time. So we've got gate areas and threshold displays within our gates to show that information to not just passengers, but employees. We're adding a ramp information display, which I know a lot of airlines have done, and that's down there on the ramp to show our ramp agents where we are in the turn. So they like to know, A, they get that clock to say, hey, am I going fast enough? But B, they like to know what phases we're in. Have we boarded the last passengers? Are we checking bags at the gate? So it provides a lot of information that helps them speed up as well. The final piece of this project is around our digital stanchions. And I don't know how many of y'all know how we work at Southwest, but we have what's called open boarding. So we use what's called stanchions, or these metal things that are in each of our gates, and it just shows people where to line up. So if you're in boarding group A, you line up in A15, so the stanchions help you find what area you line up so you can board the plane. It's a little old school, but everyone knows how to use them if you flew in Southwest. Problem is, if you haven't flown Southwest, look confusing. So we were kind of tasked with, well, how do we improve that without rebuying all new stanchions everywhere, or finding a way to do this that's going to be somewhat cost-effective, because we're a budget airline. So we came up with this digital stanchion concept. And what that is we actually designed and built halos, is what we call them, which are these big LED display things, a couple of display panels and LEDs. And they just display information right on those stanchions about the turn. If your boarding group is boarding, that lights up to tell you what side to go to. We can tell you if you need to check bags even on there. So we have a lot of people who get distracted by electronics or conversations, and they kind of forget, or they're new, and they kind of don't know where to go. So we found out that these really help facilitate that. A few lessons learned. people are excited about information, right? We're seeing our customers happy to know where they need to go and what to do. We found out people are great at self-serving as long as you provide them how to self-serve. And our employees are loving it because the more that people are self-serving, that the less that they have to do to help the customers out. So we're seeing benefits on both our ops agents and CSA side, they're having to do less work, as well as our flight attendants who now have the ability to do their job and manage the actual boarding of the plane as opposed to all the ancillary things that go on. So the final kind of piece of this whole turn work that we're working on is called turn optimization. And for that piece, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Kleist.
Thanks, sir. So yeah, Tom just walked you guys through a lot of cool work we're doing when it comes to passenger movement and how we can move those passengers a little bit faster, get on the planes and provide the right information at the right time. But we can get passengers moving onto the plane faster. We also have to look at the turn as a whole. There's a lot that goes into the turn. There's work we have below the ramp, there's work we have above the wing, and if we get passengers on faster, but we're still working at the same pace below the wing, we're going to be right in the same place we are today. So what we've done is, with the turn optimization, we've started to use computer vision, AI, ML kind of technologies, and started to really look at and understand some data of what's happening both above and below the wing. We're looking at data for real-time alerts that we can give alerts to our own people so they can take action when needed to maybe get things back on track. But we're also using those analytics to maybe to start predicting when our planes are going to go out. So we can start predicting what those turns look like. If we were getting behind on the turn and we recognize that, we can take actions to get back into place. So we're doing some proof of concepts on it. What's really cool about this is not only do we get the chance to test with the data, but now we're getting the chance to test the infrastructure and the technology to better understand how we can work on an edge environment as well as within a cloud environment. And so can we process this AI on the edge, and how well does that work for us versus processing it in the cloud? And so with this POC we're running in Atlanta right now, we've actually set up 4 gates that we're doing above the wing work with a company called Iris Technology. And we've got all 18 cameras at all 18 of our gates in Atlanta working at below the wing with a company many of you may have heard of with SITA, who I also believe is part of the innovation hub here with FTE. So we had a chance to work with them. And we brought all this together, and now we're able to get a really good picture of what's happening above and below the wing, and it allows us to kind of think through what that technology looks like and how we can scale that and how we can move that across 100+ airports. So it's great that we can not only get the data, but now we can understand the infrastructure and how we can set that up moving forward in this POC. Some of the cool stuff that's coming out of the POC is just the ability to start identifying those bags and those people. So above the wing, as Tom mentioned, there's a lot of great work happening for the passenger movement. But now we're getting a chance to start to look at both in-planing and deplaning and starting to identify passengers, starting to identify luggage, starting to even identify employees. So you want to start looking at first on, last on. You got first off, last off, understand what those gaps are, understand how long that's taking. We also want to understand what kind of bags are being taken on the plane, whether they're carry-on bags that go in the overhead bin or they're personal bags that can fit in front of the seat in front of you. So we want to take a look at that information, and we're continuing to train these models right now. We're doing a pretty good job of looking at understanding who some of our Southwest employees are. You can see there's one Southwest staff that's actually a passenger. So we're training the model and we're learning, right? And that model's got to learn over time. But what we're able to do now is with this information, I can figure out where some of those gaps are above the wing. I can start to figure out how many bags are on the plane, at what point in time do I maybe need to start gate checking those bags. Because if those bags, as many of you have experienced before, you might get on the plane and there is no room. What do? They take the bag to the back, it comes all the way back off the plane, it gets tagged, and it takes time off the turn. So we're looking at ways that we can start to provide some real-time alerts to our employees so they can start to kind of stop and gate check those bags immediately, which allows us to improve the turn. But it also starts to identify some other gaps that we can find. Are our agents walking up and down the jet bridge too many times? How many times are wheelchairs getting pushed up and down the jet bridge? Through the miracle of flight, how many people are suddenly getting off their wheelchair and can walk onto the plane? So we're trying to look at all that to better understand what that's going to look like going in the future. We also are doing work below the wing, so we're using the same technology with the cameras there to start looking at every aspect of the turn, what's happening, what time it starts, what time it ends, if it's not happening, if there are gaps, as I mentioned before. And this allows us to start creating some real-time alerting to our staff in the command center. So if we notice that the jet bridge is not connected on time and the plane is sitting there, well, those are valuable minutes that we could have gotten that jet bridge on, we can gotten those passengers off, and we could have turned that plane faster. We're getting a lot of good data and analytics from this as well that we can go back and we can run, use our data science experts to run some models against to say, hey, what makes a perfect turn? At D-20, all these aspects should have already happened. At D-5, if we're running late, we always know we're going to be off. But it allows us to predict the turn now that we can say, hey, we are ready to go. And if we're doing everything right on the passenger experience side and the passenger movement side, this plane's going to turn, we're going to get out on time, and hopefully by the end of the day, if we continue to do that consistently, maybe we can fly one more flight for the day and make some additional revenues the airlines always are looking for. And so these are just some really cool insights that we've already gotten for both above and below the wing. It allows us to, I'm not going to go through each of these, but a couple of fun stories of things we've already identified with the work is the baggage that we mentioned. We actually have done a really good job at training the model, and Marlon, I'm sure, will talk about his bag models as well here in a second. But we've done a really good job of identifying a personal and a carry-on. So now we know when the bins are going to be full. Now we can start to make some of those notes about the baggage. But if the bins are getting full, and we recognize we don't have that many carry-on bags that have come through, the more personal items that allow our flight staff to go in there and maybe start to ask people to move their personal items below the seat so we can turn things a little bit quicker. The other one is a jet bridge. We learned that in Atlanta, we had alerts set for the jet bridge, that the jet bridge was taking almost a minute sometimes to get onto the aircraft. And we looked at that information and thought about it and said, well, are the alerts too soon? Is a minute too soon? Took another step back and realized they're not. We just don't have the crew there to get that jet bridge on in time. So we found a trend very quickly just during our testing that we're now deploying the agents out to the gates a little bit faster, and the jet bridge is getting connected a little bit faster as well. So a lot of great information that's happening on that with the AI. And so as we start to bring that together with the passenger movement, we're creating a really amazing holistic view of the turn with actionable data that we can really start to make a difference in improving the turn. So thank you.
So, before I introduce Marlon, I would like you all to close your eyes. I want you to imagine you've just had a wonderful weekend break in Milan. You have been to the best shops. You've bought yourself new suits, new dresses, new shoes, new handbags. You've come back to the airport now to travel back home. You've packed it all in your brand new Louis Vuitton suitcase. You hand it over to your airline. You get on board the aircraft, have a wonderful flight and a wonderful product. Everything's great. And when you arrive at your destination, you get told, I'm sorry, your bag didn't arrive with you. We're not quite sure where it is. We'll get it back to you when we can. And now, 3 weeks has gone by, and you don't have your bag yet, because your bag is a special bag that is known as a tag-off. There's no way to identify it, apart from all those nice new things that you packed in it. It's a nightmare. It's a big problem for the airlines. So, open your eyes, and please, let me introduce Marlon, who is an innovation powerhouse and going to tell you all about the wonderful work he's been doing.
Thank you, Andrew. Before I start, and Andrew asked you to close your eyes, but I have a question to you. Are you still willing to check your bag? Raise your hand if you are willing to check your bag. You probably all bought AirTags. So I just want to have a little conversation with you guys about bags, because I loved Ivo's story. The passenger story is great.
Thank you.
And going paperless, absolutely fantastic. Andrew, you probably can say, when did we get the e-ticket and the digital boarding pass? When was that?
2008 for the final paper tickets.
Exactly, it's more than 15 years ago. Paperless, we are nowhere near paperless when it comes to baggage. And luckily, after last summer, I didn't have to say anything anymore. So this was the question that was asked for this presentation. How can we revolutionize the ways in which the industry moves and tracks bags for stakeholders and our passengers? That was the question. And let's go to Luca video first.
We have facial recognition software? Yeah. Let's use it on the bag. Don't think it's ever used this way. Look, same bag. Bingo.
This gives you an impression on what we have been doing over the last period of time. It was way before COVID and after that I saw Denzel Washington in Deja Vu. And the question is, what do we need? And what is the industry lacking when it's coming to baggage? Basically, it's data. We have no data of the objects. We have a lot of data about the tag, but we do not know anything about their bag. And it's actually stupid because a lot of airlines don't even know what they took into custody. Kevin, just a question to you. Do you know what kind of bag you get and if it's damaged or not before a passenger departs? So Kevin immediately says, no, he does know. It's not only Southwest, nobody knows. And I don't get that. Just take an image. And if you know how much is compensated for, it's ridiculous that we don't do it yet. So know your bag, that's my story. And if you watch the video a little carefully, what we have done, we have trained an algorithm, used computer vision technology, and basically we can recognize a bag based on an image. We used a term called baggage biometrics, so it's comparable with passenger biometrics. And let's take that one step further. Because how can we use that? And especially when there is a lot of disruption in a flight and the bag is not there. And after last summer, normally in average, and I'm not sure if there are airlines in the room, and I don't want to ask Kevin again, but recently I was here in London for your #1 airline, and I asked them, how many bags are in your bag graveyard? They were looking at me, oh, we don't know. Make a wild guess on an average day. 300 come in, 250 go out, so 50 will remain. It's ridiculous, that kind of numbers. I had the same in Canada recently, same situation. And I don't get that. If we have the data, we can do so much more. And a lot of people are not checking their bags because they lost faith in the system. And that's the first thing that we need to restore as an industry. And we are helping with that, and luckily a lot of airlines are believing in our story. This is the situation of today. Does somebody knows what this is? Andrew made it himself.
Yes.
It's the famous bag chart. I now have a couple. I hope they go to a museum very fast. But basically, if a bag has been on hand, so it's left behind on an airport employee fills in a form. It's this yellow one with this code. It's probably an R22 with a hard shell or soft shell, and he needs to look at the manual thing. It's in my world, in my head, it doesn't connect. Especially, it's 15 years ago that we went to the e-ticket, and the baggage journey is just a mess. And how much of a mess it is? By coincidence, it is Southwest Airlines here, who had a little bit of an issue in December. Many bags were on hand. And luckily, they did a really good job in reuniting the bags. But it's a manual process. And again, which in my head doesn't work. As an industry, we need to do better. This was in the New York Post. Hundreds of passengers stranded. Obviously, IFO probably made sure they got into a hotel. Yeah, I can imagine that. But the bags were the airport was full of bags. And that's something we cannot have. Luckily, Dublin was fantastic last summer, wasn't it? No people from Dublin Airport in the room? What a mess. It was ridiculous. And I'm from Amsterdam, I'm from Schiphol. Perfect operation at Schiphol. Everybody is avoiding Schiphol right now. So, how could we deal with this a little bit better? Well, by taking images. It starts at taking images at the backdrop, taking images within a BHS system. You can see every bag coming by. We, as BagSID, also take images when they are going into the aircraft. So we mounted cameras on the power stoves, on the belt loaders, and of course the mobile devices. Long story short here, if you have the data, if you have the image and extract more data out of it, you can do a lot more. Is this really necessary? Well, look at this slide just for a moment. If I want to buy a new bag, I will have the bag tomorrow in my hands. Exactly the bag that I want to have. So I fill in at Amazon, I want a blue bag, 4 wheels, handlebar, glossy hard shell, this size, this is what I want. And it appears on my doorstep the next day, new bag. There are some algorithms behind it. Based on some keywords, you can find a bag of your choice. I can narrow it down to the bag that I want to have, and although there are many choices. Why can't I do this for bags that are left behind? Last summer, we were invited by, or even late summer, we were invited by a European airline who had the brilliant idea to bring all the bags together to one location. And then you come into a hangar, airside, and there are 30,000 bags standing there. And when you stand in the middle of it, it's just intimidating. We did a little sweep. How many air tags there were. Fantastic, we are talking about tracing. It's not about tracing. It's about regaining trust with the passenger again. They don't care. They want to make sure that the bag arrives at arrival. Within those 30,000 bags, we counted approximately 400 low-energy Bluetooth devices. And the frustration? The passenger could see where the bag was, but couldn't get it back. And that is just insane. There is no website where you can go through. And I don't want to talk about it now with you here in the room, Andrew, but World Tracer is just a nightmare. And it's not accessible for passengers anyhow. What if I could go to a website, let's say Southwest/lost baggage, fill in some keywords, and try to find my own bag? The only thing that needs to be done is that Kevin and his team are taking photographs of the bag. It sounds simple, and in my opinion, it is simple. So we are doing it. So we are taking 360-degree bags for 2 airlines on their hubs where they're lost and found. And we are installing those arches on airports. And as we speak, we have more than 50 million baggage profiles in our databases. So what I'm basically saying to you, we need data of bags. We don't have any time to waste anymore. It's happening today. If we want to avoid the mess that we had last summer, we need to collect data of the bag, so know your bag. So what kind of data am I talking about? Of course, size, shape, color, imperfections, type of bag, hard shell, soft shell, geolocations, timestamps, where was it checked in? And we are combining that. How many bags did the bag travel? Where has it last been seen? What was the destination? So we combine it and we create a full data profile. Is that everything we get out an image? No, of course not. We are taking multiple images on multiple moments in the back journey, and we let them run through our neural network. And there's where we see way more. And it has everything to do with every element in the back journey. So feel free to talk to people in my at the stand. There's this big fan where we have this camera set up, so we can explain a little bit more. But my answer to the question is, we need data, Andrew. That's what we need. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. So we're going to dive into some Q&A, and I'm going to open it up to you in the audience. But before I do that, I've got a few things that I want to ask. One is, Marlon, can you share your data model back into the IATA team so they can update the resolution that describes that bag chart to be a little bit more modern?
I just returned from Montreal to do exactly that.
Excellent.
But there's not a lot being changed since you were gone there, Andrew. It's not going really fast.
It's an industry that's not known for its speed unless it's in the air. So, okay. Just thinking about some of the things that we've talked about, it is about data. Yeah? Everything. You need to know the inventory that's available for you to offer to the passengers. You're collecting wonderful data on your operation, and you know every element of the bag and how you can use that. What is it that is stopping the passenger having faith in these things? You know, so you mentioned we don't have, as a passenger, I don't have faith that my bag's going to arrive. As a passenger, I don't have faith that the airline's going to look after me in the best of its interests and let me have the wonderful hotel for the night that I'd like. And as a passenger, I'm expecting a delay. So starting with Marlon and working up, what are you going to do to actually build that faith, to build that trust?
In our case, when we are just focusing on the bag, when family, friends ask me, what should I do? I'm going on a holiday, should I check my bag, or should I just take a carry-on? I always say, take an image of your bag to start with. Make sure you have this tracer in it, this low-energy Bluetooth. I know, but right now, I'm not naive. In the next couple of years, we still see the paper barcode, because that's a legacy we have to deal with. But do it. In some cases, I recently flew with United from Montreal to Washington. I was in Montreal, and they gave me an update on the bag on every single point. And that was fantastic. Mm-hmm. When I arrived in Washington, it took them 45 minutes to get my bag on the belt. And that's something they need to do better. But I have the patience to do it. I will wait. I do not have any other option. But they informed me. And I like that. So we will do our best to do that exactly for baggage as well and help the airlines doing
It's interesting about that, because one of the things that the airlines hate is the passengers having more information than them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a problem that I think as an industry we should be looking to solve.
So I think at Southwest, echo some of the things he said, we need to do a better job of communicating, where the bag is, right? So we actually, you can check 2 free bags at Southwest. So we move more bags, I think, than any other airline in the world. So I think delivering the bags on time, helping regain the trust is one thing, but actually being able to leverage things like technology to communicate to the customers where their bag is, I think is probably something we need to start doing pretty quickly. And we're looking at doing that. I'll pass it to Kevin, since we're kind of tag teaming this one.
Kevin has my number.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
You guys do bag things?
Yeah, I have it. I have not used it. No, I mean, I agree. It's the communication side, but Andrew, I'll also say, I think in our case, our passengers do trust us. I think they do recognize that we are there to provide a service, and we have the hospitality and the culture to do so at Southwest. And I think there is that level of trust. I think there is just a little bit of stress and concern along the way that things, not everything goes right. So I think there's some things we're doing when it comes to communication. I think there's things we're doing that'll give them the information they need when they need it at the right time. I think there's things that you saw that we're doing to try to improve just that turn process so we can get them there on time and do it. But I do believe our customers trust us right now. I think there's just some things here and there that, unfortunately, IROPS, which we've got folks here to help solve for, and other things happen. But I think as the industry, we're doing a really good job to try to get ahead of that and prepare ourselves.
Absolutely, and I'm super envious of the data that you're building up, because I think you're going to get such operational insight out of that. It's, I'll ask you something about that in a minute. Gentlemen.
Yeah, so I think that fate is there, because when you buy a ticket for one airline, you're making a choice, and then you are already made all steps to go to this choice. And when everything goes smoothly, actually you're super loyal and you want to try it again. But when things are not going well, that's the moment that everything breaks, because your expectation is to be feeling taken care of, even when things are not going well. So that's your expectation, but actually this is not happening, because when you get off from the plane, you're losing your connection. Then you start to be asking yourself what I need to do, where I need to look for information, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to anticipate, and not just making use of our communication, but also using the profile of this passenger to get to know what is your value for my airline, and then to assign services, and then to build this loyalty even stronger that can actually increase the value that the single passenger can give to the airlines itself. So that's our perspective. And I'm sure Ivo has even more thoughts about that.
Yeah, I hear actually the same thing going back and forward. It's about timing. It's about making sure that you communicate, and communicate before anxiety kicks in. Mm-hmm. And then the trust is being protected and actually grown. And I think that's for luggage is the same thing, during a disruption is the same thing, missing a connection is the same thing. And make the communication relevant for you as a passenger. I think that's...
I think you're absolutely right there. One of the key things is to get that communication out before the passenger can build up that anxiety. Yeah, and just calm the situation down. Other questions from the audience? There must be some people here who'd like to know some details on some of the things that you've seen. We've got a roving microphone, and Ali is going to sprint to you wherever you are. Yeah, we have one.
I see a situation that most people must see, that the problem with the bag, and the problem comes after you arrive, and there's no baggage there for you to pick up. Mm-hmm. Then you have to go to a buddy, somebody who's going to give a questionnaire and take you down through all the details that you just described. I don't know if the photography part would actually do it, but it would be a help in the process. But I'd like to see some more systems organized to make sure that the bag goes on the flight it's booked.
Absolutely. So I'm going to hit this one before I hand it to you, Marlon, because I know you've got an answer.
I'm dying to give a reaction.
Absolutely. The first thing I would say is that it is possible now to do all your baggage claim processing without touching a human. So that's one thing, because everybody hates that queue. You wait for an hour for your bag to arrive. It hasn't arrived, and then you go and join a queue of other disappointed people. So that's one thing. A little side story, I was traveling one time and my bag didn't arrive, and nor did a lady who I was traveling with, a girl from the office that I was quite keen on actually. And we arrived into Washington, no bags, went and talked to the airline. They filed the mishandled bag report. Then the next day they delivered 2 bags to us which were not ours. They were similar bags, but they were not ours. At the end of the story, we got the bags back just as we were leaving from Chicago rather than from Washington, and I end up marrying the young lady. So I actually quite like it when my bag gets lost, although my wife's not too keen on that now. Marlon.
Yeah, basically what the gentleman is saying is totally right. I'd rather crash my car and deal with the insurance aftermath of that than losing my bag again. It's a nightmare. It's something that happens, and it's always in this little dark corner of the airport where you need to go to fill in this form, have an argument if there is a human body to talk to, probably a smelly area, tons of bags around. You don't want that. And I have to give it to you, the image probably won't do it. The data behind the image will do it. Yeah. And then you have to completely process behind it. And we are working on it. Today we have to deal with an old-fashioned system which was once built by SITA and IATA called World Tracer, which is the basis now for baggage recovery. Yeah, and obviously there is a need to keep that as it is right now. That's called a monopoly.
So interesting, interesting stuff there about having more data and making sure you've got the right things and so forth. Kevin, in your world, improving that turn, are you finding that you're able to do some sort of on-the-go Kaizen type stuff where you can make little changes and see how they impact the operation to give you some benefits there?
Yeah, and that's the goal of getting the data, is to, one of the things as we're looking at with the turn is going through the data and identifying what makes a perfect turn. When that plane comes in on time and it goes out on time, what are all the steps that happen? Today, people are out there with a clipboard writing things down and then they benchmark against it, right? Now we've got the data continuously streaming in for every flight that comes through every gate, and we just have thousands and thousands of data points. So we're starting to look at that data, really starting to understand it, and based on what we're able to see, we can start to make small changes and see how those changes affect the turn. So yes, we're starting to use it for our benefit to improve that turn, and the more data we get, just the more points we have to try to work through that.
Okay, excellent. Is there another question from the audience? Yeah.
Hi, Andrew. It's Nigel Collard. I'm with Hit It. But personal experience, my wife and I had a holiday in Mexico, domestic flight, Mexican carrier, got to Mexico City, transfer, world's favorite airline, got to Heathrow, late evening, no bag, put in the complaint, no communication, and it took about 3 weeks. It had been misdirected on another flight to, I think, France. And by the time I got the bag back, the contents were wrecked.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, okay, when airlines need to cooperate, when it comes to transfers, different carriers, domestic or international, couple of questions. Don't know if that's something that people can address as well.
Yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing there is you were coming from Latin America, and one of the problems in Latin America is the quality of the baggage tags is very low. Yeah, so if you're a Latin American station, please go and buy your tags from EasyTag outside. They'll sort you out. The fact is that there's a lot of things that can go wrong in all of those transfer processes. How it ended up going to France, well, that's worrying, to be quite honest. That sounds like hey, this is the last flight to the right continent, put the bags on there and let's not tell the regulator. Yeah, so how would you have solved that problem, Marlon? Would you have had an easy solution if I was doing optical recognition of my bags?
First of all, having the image, then we are talking about the interoperability of it, the prorating of it, making sure that data is going along the chain until destination. We are a long way from making that happen right now. But for example, we are working with the IAG group, and within the group they have their partners. They involve their partners as well. And in this case, 2 different airlines, probably not in the same alliance. That makes it a little bit different. Same discussion was brought up by the baggage working group from IATA. So we get it, but if we don't change to a world where we get the data of the bags, we will be stuck with the paper tags for the next century, and we need to change that.
Yeah. On that paper tag subject, paper tags wrap the planet 67 times a year. So you go outside, please go to the EasyTag stand, get one of their tags, and then just imagine that 67 deep going all the way around the planet. Luckily theirs don't have liner labels on, otherwise they'd be thicker. Gentlemen, just thinking about that disruption process and how you're interacting with the passenger, are you able to have a two-way communication with the passenger that lets them give some sort of sentiment back, rather than just I'd rather have the Hilton than the Marriott, or the airlines I fly with, the Holiday Inn, rather than a tent? Are you able to capture frustrations, special needs, and things like that coming back as well?
Yeah. That's a short answer. I will give you a more extensive answer. Sure. I think we're all dying for a beer, but yes. And the reason is that we ask them at the end with the NPS scoring, so they already give feedback. The two-way communication is an interesting part because all the airlines are saying, hey, can you not do like a WhatsApp? I said, hey, do you have people available to answer that WhatsApp? No. Well, then don't do it. So what we're doing right now is, and the chatbot is not the holy grail, so if that's the answer, then I put a little smile on my face and continue the conversation. The answer to that question right now, what we're doing, is a callback function. So we have the SSR codes, we know who you are, we know your special needs, and in the portal that you can have the opportunity, please call me. And we have airlines right now which are putting that in a special queue, and then the people from the contact center reach out to you instead of you reaching out to them. And that's much more efficient, and that also goes back into the profile, goes back into the data, and then follows the whole flow again. So yes, it's a way to do it, but think about during a disruption, most likely you don't have the staff to answer at one time 3,000 people which press the button, I want to chat with you. And I did it myself in Jeddah last week with the KLM, and they were responding to me during a normal situation. I did it a couple of months before with Transavia, and no reply yet 3 days later. Because there was a disruption and they could not handle it. So
the crowd was too large.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just put care back into customer care.
Yeah.
Because just not hearing it, just putting the word care back into customer care, as opposed to just having this echoing void where you just don't get any communication update until literally, oh, we think we found it, but in between it might be a week, it might be 2 or 3 weeks, I guess. Well, if you want customer loyalty, and the airline says, yeah, we really value your customer, hang about, you drop the ball now.
But the problem,
let me...
if I may add something, I mean, again, I think there is intention to do there. Everyone is talking about customer care, but at the end, this comes back to data. Because if you don't have the data, you're not then, enabling how to basically do the customer care. And I think in various examples, this shows where is the problem at the moment, that's simple reason, simple answer.
Okay. The other answer to it is that over the last period of months, and probably Southwest can say something about it, with a normal operation, you want to have a communication and not to the extent of 3 weeks. But we have seen disruptions which are called mass disruptions. If you have, as an airline, 30,000 bags on your hand, you get nowhere near good communication. So we have to cut them some slack and make sure that we give them the new tools to deal with that kind of situation earlier and do the communication right. There is something wrong as well, because you expect the airline to contact you when something goes wrong. Let's flip the model for a moment. What if you can get to the airline and find your bag yourself and do some self-deployment here? I think that would be more satisfying anyhow.
It can be. Like I say, I know a lot of airline CEOs who got very upset that the passengers knew more than them. But okay, we're going to wrap it up at that point. What I would suggest, Nigel, put something unique in your bag every trip. Because World Tracer, once you've not managed to match on the bag tag or anything else, it matches on the contents of the bag. So something unique that you can say, when you find that, it was my bag. That might help. Not too unique, though. I've seen some interesting bag content. So if I can just ask you all to say thank you again to our panel. Thank you. And I'm sure there'll be...